And as soon as this thing is ready and I can talk them into it, I want them to go in there and change it. I'll put up with this thing, tolerate this thing, because maybe they're learning something they should know.
Right.
But the minute I get off that table tomorrow, I'm going to say, hey, when are we going to go to work on this thing? And because I got another one coming. This will be along then later, so I've got to go through the whole routine again with that.
Right.
I'd like to do it all at once,
Yeah.
but I don't know whether they do that or not.
You didn't ask the lady that had both of hers done, whether they did them at the
No,
same
I
time?
didn't. I forgot to ask her. I didn't have a long conversation with her,
Yeah.
but there were a lot of questions I should have asked her.
I guess they probably wouldn't do them both at the same time, would they? It kind of seems like maybe they wouldn't want to do them both at the same time.
Well,
just in
I can
case.
understand it with eyes or something, or cataracts or something like that, where they do them one at a time, in case they make a mistake.
Right.
But I don't see any real reason why, this thing is old hat with surgeons anymore.
Yeah.
This thing's like your dad filling a tooth.
Right.
And so I don't know any particular reason why they couldn't do them both at once, except that maybe if the body that they're doing it to is discrepant and can't handle
Right.
that abuse.
Right.
But I think I could.
Yeah.
I don't know. They probably know whether I could better than I do. I'm
Yeah.
always optimistic.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
I didn't. I'm not going to Mexico either, actually.
Well, you're not.
No, we decided not to go too,
Uh-huh.
and I was pretty disappointed. But, that's not what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Does
Well, I couldn't go to Mexico City. What I'd like to do, I'd like to go to Mexico City with a whole gang,
right.
like they're going to do. Most of them are going to meet in Mexico City for a week and then go over to Veracruz, where the best we could do, because I can't walk around, is go to Veracruz. Maybe go a few days early, spend some time in Veracruz, and then when you guys, or the rest of the guys, come over to Veracruz to go up to Ixtapalapa or whatever
Right.
it is, well, then we'd go with them, see?
Right.
And then come back to Veracruz and home again. Because there is a Continental flies from Houston right directly to Veracruz, which
Yeah.
would be we'd have to do, I guess.
But does any well, it's kind of silly, but since we're talking about health and things like that, what do you think about your own mortality? I mean, not to.
You mean my longevity?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I can't see any reason why I can't make 100. I think once I get these legs fixed, I'll tell you this. When you have something wrong with your system, and this happens to be legs with me, it draws you down. It takes lots of spark out of you. I'll tell you that. I mean, I find myself groping around, where usually I walk with a bounce, or did before this came up. And so I think when they're fixed again, I'll be walking with the bounce again. That's what I'm looking forward to, getting back to where I was.
Yeah.
But I don't know. You never can tell. I mean, when you get to our age, my age, there's a lot of little things in the wings waiting to attack you,
Yeah.
And like I say, I feel I've got a good set of genes, and I can beat most of it. But who knows? I don't. And then there's always the possibility of an accident, something happening. Of course, I'm cagey about that too. I'm a defensive driver, and I lock the doors every night and stuff like that. A real chicken.
Because I'm 26 now, and as long as I can remember, you don't seem to have aged at all to me.
Well, as a matter of fact, well, of course I have, and we both know
yeah.
that. Now, if you would take a look now at me, and then you would see me in a movie or whatever 20 years ago when you were 6, say, geez, there is a difference. But when you see somebody all the time, you don't see the passing of time, the changes that take place. But I think,
Well, you do and you don't. You don't, except for when there's such a huge age difference, like between us. I think.
Mhm.
I mean, you're the same age as both of my. Well, you're about roughly the same age as both my grandmas, who are, both now passed on.
Mhm.
And they did some marked aging in my life that I saw.
Well,
Do you know what I
that's
mean?
probably the reason they
And
passed
you-
on too.
Yeah. Well,
So-
yeah.
I think there will come a time, I don't know, I hope it's in the far future, but I will too. I'll reach an age when all my systems go kaput, and all of a sudden, zing, zing, this guy shriveling, I don't know when it's going to be, and I hope it's, when it does, it's quick.
But you've seen most of most of your peers. You've outlived, I'm sure, most of your peers.
Yeah, I have. Well, yeah, that's a fact. I have. Most of my friends now are 20 years younger than I am, about 20 years younger. Frank, that I played golf with, always play golf with, he's 68. And Joe, the other guy that I play he's 72. And see, that's 72. That's 13 years younger than I am. He's the oldest one of the bunch. The rest of them are all younger than that. So, yeah, people my age, most of them are gone. Or they might be some over in L.A. that are my age that are still living that I've lost track of. That weren't bosom buddies, but acquaintances and good friends, golfing buddies and things like that. Since I've moved away from there, it's surprising what distance can do to your friendships.
Yeah.
It kills them.
Yeah.
And so it has with mine. I mean, I've been gone from there 18 years, from Southern California. I've been over a few times to see them, particularly when Charlotte and Gus still lived there. Would stay with them, and I'd spend some time with my friends and go out and see them. But since they left, which is now 6 or 7 years ago, I haven't been over there at all. So I don't know. I don't know who's died and who hasn't. But even over there, most of my friends were much younger than I was. My best friend, Lou Lenz, is now probably 70. And most of those guys were. Jack Phillips, my very dear friend, was a little older than I was. But he's been dead now for, he's been gone for, he's dead about 24 years already.
Wow.
And Hal Hunter, he's younger than I am, but not too much. He's only about 3 or 4 years younger than me. He's my friend in Spokane, Seattle,
Okay.
or in Edmonds, Washington, which
Right.
is a suburb.
Yeah.
And we're really good buddies and have been since the Second World War. That's when we met each other. And he's still kicking along, and so is Dorothy, his wife. They're doing pretty well. And I talk to him frequently on the phone, but I haven't been up there now for, I think the last time I was up there when Marcy and I went up there in '87. That's 12 years ago, or 11 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's how time flies. Time
Yeah.
gets away from you. But Hal's been a great friend of mine forever. And but I've lost a lot of friends. I certainly have. And it's hard to see them go. Some of them really get to you. Death is such a final thing,
Yeah.
And that's the thing. The thought of somebody dying, like my mother, for example. say, I'll never see her again. Of course, you to believe differently. And thank goodness you do, because it's no fun to think as I do. And so I hope that I'm wrong, and I hope that I do see all of you one day up there. I'll have to clean up my act a little bit, though, I suppose. I won't get through the doors.
Well, you definitely have a unique perspective, because rarely do humans get to live as long as you do. I mean, I know you don't think it's a big deal, but
Well,
when you got to consider the
what's unique
average-
about it? I don't.
Well, there's not many people that make it to 85.
Well, that's true.
It
I'm
really
certainly
is
lucky.
rare, and
Yeah.
and it's in the concourse of the historical perspective of all of time. I mean, it's just this century that people have been living this long, anyways.
Well, I think they're going to live progressively longer as time goes on, and medical things. They're really come up with some fantastic stuff.
Yeah.
And now when they're getting into molecular things like this, why they're getting right to the nubbins. They're getting right to the nubbins where they can adjust these things and make ills lose them altogether. It's fantastic. I hope I'm not too early to have some of that happen. Maybe I need a few molecules adjusted.
Well, how has time passed throughout your life? I mean, you said, boy, you mentioned, no, boy, that sure shows how time flies.
It does. Time has never gone faster than it's going right now. And I don't know whether that's because I'm older or it's what I'm doing or what, but it seems like every other day is Saturday. It's just bing, bing, bing. It just goes by so fast. I mean, the months fly by. And I suppose you have to say the same thing. I mean, with everybody, I think time flies, particularly if they're doing something they like to do. It goes faster. But boy, I'll tell you, I've never seen it race by like it has in recent years. Well, I think since I've married Marcy, it seems to have been going a lot faster. That's when I wanted to slow down.
Isn't that funny? I mean, well, I think, I've been around for so long that I have this great perspective on it, and for me, I go through stretches, obviously, but it only seems to get faster. I know everybody says that, and it sounds really like a cliche.
It's not a cliche, it's fact.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cliche because it's mentioned so often, but on the other hand, it's a cliche that is true. I mean, it does. There's somebody will show you a watch and say, look, that isn't going any faster now than it went 20 years ago.
Right.
Well, it's true, but it just seems to go faster. It's not, time does not change. I mean, the seconds tick off at the same speed. The hours tick off the same. The years tick off the same. But up here, it moves by faster and faster.
I guess it would be, following that whole idea that it goes faster, the longer, I guess it just gets to a point where, I don't know, I guess life experiences just go by so much faster because
Well, they do.
they're old hat,
Yeah.
or I don't know.
The thing is regrettable about it is that after this week pass, I say to myself, my gosh, it just seemed like yesterday was last Saturday. That is a week out of my life. It's gone. That fast. And I haven't got a lot of weeks left. And a lot of people haven't got a lot of weeks left. And boy, they're clicking off like that. I mean, that scares you. Really does. But
at the same time, I don't want to make this sound wrong, but you've lived, not that you're ready to go or anything, but you've done a lot in your life.
Well, I haven't accomplished an awful lot in my life, but I've had an interesting life. I've enjoyed what I've done all my life. I've always headed towards that area that gave me enjoyment, like music, like photography, and I like to paint. I like to write. Those things that I enjoy doing, I do. And so, from that standpoint, I've had a very successful life. That I haven't had to trudge at something that I hated to do and hated to go to work in the morning, and was all beat at home at night, so I couldn't enjoy an evening. I haven't that, but when I look back at my life, I'm very critical of what I had not accomplished and what I could have. I mean, I could have been a multi-millionaire just as easy as not, because I was in a good business and I was doing well, but money was not important to me. I could have worked a little harder and made a lot more money, but I just, I was happy in what I had, and so I just went along that way, you know, just
Well,
kind of
you-
goofing off.
Yeah, you kind of give off mixed messages there. You say it like it's something that you didn't accomplish, but at the same time, it doesn't sound like you really regret having done it.
Well, it all depends on how I look at it. Like I told you before, I always did things I like to do, so there's no regret there. And another thing too, I took off time after I got at first when the older girls were still at home. I was working hard then, trying to get the business going. It took me several years to get the thing. It took me 10 years before I ever took a vacation. And it was during those 10 years the kids were growing up, Joanne and Nancy. But when your mother and Bonnie came along, I had things pretty well under control. I was making some money. I wasn't fabulous, but I was making enough. I could put them through school and everything else, and we were divorced at that time, and I was paying alimony. And things got progressively better, and then 1960, up to that time, I had a studio in Hollywood, and I had up to 11 people working for me. All of them weren't working in my particular photographic business, because I had another business going on the side with a fellow by the name of Maury Bruckman. That's another story. But anyhow, in 1960, I told Harry Keller, my accountant and a very good friend of mine, I says, Harry, I'm working too stinking hard, and what can I do to cut some of the work and still get a sizable income, or without too much hurting the income too much? So he says, well, I'm glad you asked, because I've been thinking, why don't you do this for a long time? He says, all you have to do, he says, is close the studio and just take care of your sports stuff. He says, according to the books, the sports stuff is bringing in all your money. The rest of it's bringing you in a lump, but it isn't worth all the effort you're doing. So he says, get rid of all the commercial accounts and everything else, and just handle the sports, which meant Del Mar, Hollywood Park, and Santa Anita, and the Western Harness Racing Association, and the Rams. And I couldn't believe it when he first said it, but then he had all the figures, and he could show me, you know.
Yeah.
But he didn't have to. I just took his word for it, because he and I were buddies. We were really good friends. Another one that died out from under me. And so anyhow, I closed the studio over in Hollywood and built a dark room into my home. And I kept 2 guys to help me with the racetracks and the Rams. And they had dark rooms in their home, fortunately. And we had dark rooms at the racetracks. So we had all the facilities we needed to do the
Right.
process everything. And so I had all that overhead I got rid of. I had Well, I got rid of about 8 people. I got rid of the rental, the lease, and everything over in Hollywood was substantial. And all the other running around. And it was so much easier because most of my work, the guys worked the tracks. I didn't have to do that too much. I went out on weekends.